It's been revealed that Prince Andrew hosted the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as well as Ghislaine Maxwell and Harvey Weinstein at the Royal Lodge, the publicly owned home where he effectively lives rent-free after he paid for its renovations.
What really happened inside Royal Lodge? A question everyone demands an answer to after all the scandals circulating Prince Andrew. Tonight, we peel back the curtain on the unraveling bond between Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Sarah Ferguson, a partnership once strengthened by secrecy, now collapsing under the weight of Epstein's shadow and Andrew's growing isolation. How did a couple who survived decades of scandals, debts, and royal pressure suddenly turn on each other?
Months after a US arrest warrant was issued for Epstein for the sexual assault of a minor, and Epstein was then arrested by police in Florida just 8 days after that event.
A newly resurfaced photograph confirms that Prince Andrew hosted Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Harvey Weinstein inside Royal Lodge, the publicly owned estate where Andrew has effectively lived rent-free after funding its renovation. The image places all three at a private birthday celebration in 2006, just 2 months after a U.S. arrest warrant was issued for Epstein for the sexual assault of a minor. 8 days after this event, Epstein was arrested in Florida. Until now, reports only suggested the trio visited Windsor Castle for the festivities. What was not known, what changes the entire tone of the story, is that Andrew welcomed them into his own home, a detail he has not addressed. Maxwell is now serving a 20-year sentence for trafficking girls for Epstein. Weinstein, convicted in New York and Los Angeles, remains one of the most notorious figures in modern crime. And yet, there they stood, inside Royal Lodge, smiling at a birthday party. Royal journalist Pandora Forsyth says this photo is catastrophic for Andrew. He has long insisted he was unaware of Epstein's arrest warrant when hosting him for Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday. But the resurfacing of this image comes at a moment when the public is demanding Andrew be removed from Royal Lodge entirely. Titles have already been stripped, exile is looming, and this picture, taken inside a home owned by the Crown, makes distancing himself nearly impossible.
Ultimately, if he stayed within the Great Windsor Estate, he'd still get all the privileges of being within the Great Windsor Estate, including security. So he'd still very much live the life of a prince, but behind the walls of the Great Windsor Estate.
Inside the palace, pressure is boiling. A move him out conversation is reportedly active and urgent. The Royal Lodge, 30 rooms, sprawling grounds, and a symbol of his remaining privilege may soon be taken from him. And if Andrew goes, Sarah Ferguson must go too. This photo hasn't just reopened a scandal. It has reopened the palace's most uncomfortable question. What do you do with a royal who will not stop haunting the headlines? While Andrew Mountbatten Windsor may have lost the title of prince, he has not been erased from the monarchy. In a twist that shocks many outside the royal bubble, Andrew remains 8th in line to the British throne. Even after King Charles formally stripped his brother of his HRH style, military titles, and royal honors last month, Buckingham Palace quietly updated the website to reflect the demotion. Yet Andrew's position in the line of succession remains untouched.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor may no longer be a prince, but he still has a shot at becoming king.
That detail matters, not because anyone imagines Andrew will ever sit on the throne, but because it shows just how deeply entrenched and legally complicated his status is. Removing him from succession would require an act of parliament and approval from all 14 Commonwealth realms. And according to the BBC, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has no plans to attempt such a process. In other words, Andrew stays in the line, not out of favor, but out of bureaucracy. This limbo has only worsened tensions inside Royal Lodge. Sarah Ferguson, once his closest ally and lifelong buffer against public pressure, now finds herself caught in the fallout. As Andrew's titles vanish and the walls close in, his behavior has reportedly grown distant, volatile, and unpredictable, turning their long-standing arrangement from a protective partnership into a fragile, cracking facade.
This week, Prince Andrew gave back his Duke of York titles in disgrace, and the party is over for the prince, literally. Because we can reveal, party pooper Andrew this week cancelled Sarah Ferguson's birthday celebrations at Royal Lodge.
Because while succession law may keep Andrew in place, his scandals are steadily dismantling the life he built with Sarah, piece by piece, room by room, headline by headline. This week marked another humiliating chapter for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. After returning his Duke of York titles in disgrace, He delivered a second blow, this time to the one person who stood by him through every scandal. Sarah Ferguson turned 66 on Wednesday, and Royal Lodge had been preparing to celebrate. Staff, neighbors, and longtime friends were invited. Decorations were planned. The estate workers who adore her were ready to throw her a warm, familiar birthday gathering, but Andrew cancelled the entire event at the last minute.
It came in a week of crisis for Prince Andrew. He had been exposed as a liar in The Sun on Sunday after emailing Epstein saying, "We're in this together," just 24 hours after a photo emerged of him.
The timing is telling. He had just been exposed as a liar after emails emerged, showing him messaging Jeffrey Epstein, "We're in this together," sent only a day after a photo resurfaced of him with Virginia Giuffre. Within hours, new excerpts from Virginia's memoir became public, accusing Andrew of entitlement and describing how he believed sex with her was his birthright. With pressure mounting and headlines closing in, Andrew spiraled. And instead of leaning on the woman who protected him for decades, he pushed her away. Their relationship, once described as an unbreakable post-divorce alliance, now looks increasingly fragile. Sarah surrendered her own York title out of loyalty to him. She defended him publicly when no one else would. She absorbed his scandals, sheltered him from fallout, and kept their home life running even as the world scrutinized every misstep. For years, they functioned as emotional anchors for each other, two flawed people surviving inside the royal bubble. But the dynamic has changed. Andrew's shame, fear, and isolation have turned inward, leaving Sarah caught in the crossfire. Canceling her birthday wasn't just about stress, it was symbolic. A marriage that once operated as a united front is now fraying. Their bond, built on secrecy, loyalty, and mutual dependence, is weakening under the weight of scandal. For the first time in decades, it looks less like a partnership and more like two people sinking separately under the same royal storm.
A palace source has since confirmed that plans to strip Andrew of his titles and evict him from Royal Lodge had been underway for some while. Perhaps he already knew at the funeral that Andrew's downfall was imminent. Perhaps he had already spoken to his father, King Charles.
A palace insider has now confirmed that plans to strip Andrew of his remaining titles and remove him from Royal Lodge were already in motion long before the public knew. And looking back at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, the signs were unmistakable. Prince William kept a visible distance from Andrew, offering only stiff politeness, suggesting he already knew Andrew's final downfall was imminent. But the moment also exposed something deeper: the quiet collapse of Andrew and Sarah's long, complicated partnership. Sarah Ferguson once served as Andrew's buffer, his comfort zone, the person who softened the blow of his worst scandals. Yet at the funeral, she was no longer treated as an extension of his world. William and Catherine kept the interaction painfully brief, barely engaging with either of them. Catherine's downward gaze and William's clenched jaw spoke to a royal shift. Andrew and Sarah were now liabilities, not a pair to be politely indulged.
Heir to the throne appeared decidedly uncomfortable, with his jaw clenched. Matching his vibes, Catherine stared at her shoes, ultimately finding them far more interesting.
And standing beside Andrew that day, Sarah seemed more like someone sharing his consequences than sharing his life. She too has now lost her titles, her patronages, her protective shield. Their once unified front, two ex-spouses who lived, strategized, and survived together, looked fractured. What once bound them was secrecy and mutual reliance. Now, what binds them is fallout they can't escape. Behind palace walls, insiders say the distance between them is growing. As Andrew faces punishment and potential eviction, he has become closed off, resentful, and increasingly solitary. Sarah, meanwhile, has been left exposed without the royal buffer she depended on. The funeral didn't just foreshadow Andrew's demise. It foreshadowed the unraveling of a partnership that once seemed unbreakable. In that brief, uncomfortable moment on the cathedral steps, the truth was clear. Andrew and Sarah are no longer a unit, just two people bracing for separate consequences.
There are also concerns that Sarah Ferguson could potentially go rogue and start airing more secrets of the royal family if they are to be exiled from royal life, and insiders believe that
what's unfolding now is far more explosive than Andrew's lost titles or their looming eviction. Inside palace circles, there is a growing fear that Sarah Ferguson might finally go rogue. And this isn't idle gossip, it's a serious concern at the highest levels of the monarchy. Unlike Andrew, who is unlikely to do a hairy and publish a tell-all memoir, Sarah would. She's done it twice before, and insiders believe she may be preparing to do it again.
2011, talking about finding Sarah, a duchess's journey to find herself. Well, it was a journey to find more money. That's what it's trying to do. More.
The timing could not be worse. Andrew is facing the consequences of his years-long denial. Sarah, stripped of her titles and removed from multiple charities, is more exposed than ever. If forced out of Royal Lodge, the one place she's built her entire post-divorce life around, what does she have left to lose? Publishers know she's vulnerable, they're circling, they're waiting, and they're whispering about advances large enough to tempt someone with her long history of financial instability. So the question becomes, if the monarchy pushes Andrew and Sarah out, what secrets might she take with her? This uncertainty is widening the already deepening crack between Andrew and Sarah. For decades, their bond was built on shared loyalty and shared silence. They protected each other because exposing the other meant exposing themselves. But the palace now views Sarah not as Andrew's emotional anchor, but as a potential liability. And Andrew knows it. That knowledge has shifted their dynamic. He has become guarded, withdrawn, suspicious of the very woman he once relied on. Sarah, meanwhile, feels cornered, losing her home, her status, and her stability in one sweep. The trust between them, once oddly unshakable, now feels like glass under pressure. And all of this is happening as Prince William prepares a radical modernization of the monarchy. Fewer titles, less pomp, more accountability. In this new vision, there is no room for loose ends. And Andrew and Sarah are the loosest ends of all. So the question now is no longer just whether Andrew and Sarah will weather this storm together. It's whether they can survive with
Prince Andrew and Fergie's bombshell Royal Lodge demand revealed.
The latest twist is perhaps the most shocking of all. After years of insisting they would never leave Royal Lodge, Andrew and Sarah have reportedly agreed to walk away from the 30-bedroom estate they once treated as an impenetrable fortress. For two people who survived scandals, divorces, bankruptcies, and global humiliation under the same roof, the idea of them voluntarily splitting their lives is extraordinary. Yet insiders say the writing is finally on the wall. Royal Lodge is gone, and with it, the last structure holding their strange partnership together. According to reports, Andrew has his eye on Frogmore Cottage, the former home of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a twist that would have seemed unimaginable months ago. Meanwhile, Sarah reportedly wants Adelaide Cottage, the charming Windsor residence currently used by William and Catherine. The fact that she is already carving out her own separate space speaks volumes. So the question becomes, if they're choosing different homes, what does that reveal about the state of their relationship?
He is willing to leave, but these are his demands. He is realistic and knows the writing is on the wall and that his time at Royal Lodge is up. Sarah and Andy have lived together at Royal Lodge since 2008 despite being divorced. It's incredible that they are willing to go their separate ways.
A palace source told The Sun that Andrew is realistic now. He knows he has no leverage left. He knows eviction is inevitable, and he knows that keeping Sarah beside him only complicates his already collapsing position. The source's most telling line? It's incredible that they are willing to go their separate ways. For decades, the world asked why Andrew and Sarah continued living together long after their divorce. The answer was always simple. They needed each other. Emotionally, financially, strategically. Their unity was their last shield. Now that shield is cracking. Andrew's demands suggest a man trying to secure whatever comfort he can before total isolation. Sarah's push for Adelaide Cottage suggests a woman preparing for a life independent from him, perhaps for the first time in 28 years. And both moves underline the same truth. The Royal Lodge era is over. Their partnership is dissolving. And if they move into separate homes, the question isn't whether their relationship is breaking. It's whether it has already broken, quietly, finally, and completely.